Did you have directors meeting this afternoon? I think last year. So yeah, just send them.
Here, let me just get on the floor. Please. Thanks. Oh, here's one. Is that square?
Eight.
Here we go. Make sure.
I'll order it to you.
We'll call the budget meeting to order. Okay. So, first item of business, mid-year budget hearing. We'll have a review of the district budget. And so let's call on our Dr. Zadowski to introduce.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone for being here. This mid-year budget hearing, this is something we've been doing for, I think it's about 5 years now. And it's just kind of a nice way to go through some of the budget trends and some of the major things that are impacting our school district budget. I appreciate the work of Leah Theater, also the other directors and administrative team members who provide feedback and input on this presentation. So we'll get right at it, and when we get to the end, we'll have time for questions. So Leah, go ahead. This is Leah Theater, our Director of Business Services.
Okay, we're gonna do a overview of this year's budget mid-year. The total budget for the school district for 2021 school year is approximately $56 million. There are a lot of factors that impact our school finances, and those include state laws and mandates, student enrollment, property values, capital expenses, of course grants, and then salaries and benefits are a big portion of our budget. The key dates in our budgeting process, we kick off the year with August, that's our annual meeting and budget hearing. In September, we have our third Friday membership count. In October, the state aid calculations are released and the board adopts the final budget for this year, and then the tax levy is approved. In November, that is, November 10th is the deadline to certify the tax levy to the municipal clerks. Here in January, we have our second Friday membership count, and then we have our mid-year budget hearing. In February, we begin the process to start next year's budget process. We start out in February with that estimate, early discussions, and then in May, we have more discussions on that preliminary budget, and then in June, we have a recommended budget that the board adopts or approves, and then they schedule the annual meeting and budget hearing. A little bit about Wisconsin school finance. The revenue limit provides for a per pupil adjustment. We're in the first year of our biennial budget from the state. The state set that rate at 0 for this year and next school year. The low revenue ceiling was frozen at 10,000, so there'll be no increase to that 10,000 for this year or next year. General state aids and school levy credits for Sdma, the past 5-year overall average has increased about 3%. And the per pupil categorical aid increase is maintaining, the state approved maintaining that funding at $742 per pupil for this year and next year. State special education categorical aid is based on estimates of eligible costs. Last year it was at 28.18%, and it's increasing to 29.84% this school year. And then our transportation aid, the state is increasing pupils transported over 12 miles from $365 to $375. And they're eliminating a proration of summer school transportation aid. Here in Sdma, about 17 students qualified. They were in that 12-mile or over category. So a small portion of our students in that category ride. The largest portion would be in the 2 to 5 mile. Our enrollment history, here's a look at the last 5 years. You'll see last year we had a pretty good sized dip at 3310. And then this year it has bounced back a little bit to 3407. Last year that significant increase there, of course, was due to COVID-19 and uncertainties, but we did bounce back a little bit this year. If we take a look at our estimated enrollment projection, the forecast for the next 5 years, you'll see that next year we're projecting it to go up slightly, and then after that, another slight increase, and then some decreases, and then another increase 5 years out. But it's really hard to project enrollments. There's many factors that go into that. So to look 5 years ahead is difficult. You know, it might not be a real good, accurate assessment of what that's at. So we'll take a look at what our enrollments and registrations are at the start of next year to get a better idea where we're at.
But the good news is that we've been kind of on a stable enrollment pattern. There are some school districts, many school districts in Wisconsin that, you look even 5 years out, you can see a pretty significant decline in enrollment. We've held our own pretty well here in Menomonie.
Our property tax values, we've seen a steady increase over the past 5 years. This year's increase was just over 5%, it was 5.32%. Last year, it went up 7.09%. So it did increase, not quite as much as last year, but it is steadily increasing. Next year, we always, for beginning preliminary budget estimates, we use the prior year values. So we'll start out the year with the prior year, this year's amount, but likely to see another increase. And then our tax rate history. This is our mill rate. You'll see it decreased this year, went down to 7.71 or 0.77 cents. If you look at the breakdown there, the bar chart, the gray portion is our general operations tax revenue limit mill rate. The portion in red is our referendum approved debt service, and then the blue portion at the top is our community ed service portion of the tax rate. There is a small portion that's in yellow. It's so small you can't even see it on the chart. It's only a couple $100, but that's for our property tax chargebacks. And then we have a regional tax rate comparison. We're highlighted there on the chart in red, and we're at 7.71, as I had stated. The overall group average is 8.31, so we are under the group average. There's a few surrounding districts that are higher than us or higher than the average as well. Barron, Hudson, Rice Lake, and Spring Valley all are over that average. The Wisconsin Parental Choice Program and Special Needs Scholarship Program, we have one private school in our district that participates in these programs. The WPCP program allows eligible students to attend a participating private school pre-K 4 through 12th grade. And then the Special Needs Scholarship Program, or SNSP, allows a student with a disability who meets certain eligibility requirements to receive a state-funded scholarship to attend that school. The WPCP program had 39.8 FTE students. The SNSP had 6.6 FTE students this year. So the total impact on our budget was $387,649. Now the Sdma receives a non-recurring revenue limit adjustment equal to that per pupil choice payment, and that allows us to replace the general state aid reduction through an increase in the property taxes. This chart is a graph on our equalization aid history over the past 5 years. As you can see, as I mentioned before, it has gone up, increased over the past 5 years. There's a little dip last year, but now it's gone up this year. Sdma, in the formula for equalization from the state, if we spend more money, we receive more aid on that money. So this is reflecting that. The amounts on the bottom is how we are aided on that. The state has primary aid, secondary aid, and tertiary aid. So this just gives you the history of what percentage in each of those 3 categories we are aided on. Our operating budget of revenues and expenses, you can see for revenues, our budget this year is 0.32% higher than last year's actuals, and then our expenses are 2.51% higher. If we take a look at our fund balance, you'll see for the last 3 years it's been pretty consistent. Our budget this year, we're projecting, as you can tell on the graph, just a slight decrease. But due to the additional COVID and ESSER funds that we're going to be receiving, I expect to see that we'll likely see a slight increase in our fund balance by the end of the year. The portion in blue is our unassigned fund balance, that's for general operations, and then the assigned portion in red, that is for our self-funded health insurance. The next slide is our debt service, Fund 30 payments. You can see the tallest line on the chart was last year. And as you recall, we had a big refinancing last year, which caused that to go up significantly. And now it's dropped back down to what our regular payments will be. And if you look out 11, 12 years, that stays pretty consistent. Fund 46 is our capital long-term improvement fund. This is a chart on our fund balance in that fund. In this school year 21-22, we're at just over 5.9 million. In the 2019-2020 school year, we paid off our non-referendum debt, Fund 38. And so the amount of those payments we have moved into funding this Fund 46. So we increased our Fund 46 contribution by that payment amount when we paid that debt off.
We'll be talking about this a little bit more in the board meeting tonight when we discuss the 30-year capital maintenance plan. But one thing that may be important as we look at some of the energy projects that we have designated and recommended into our long-term capital maintenance fund, I think it's going to be important that we also look at the revenue side of that. Right now, we've really focused on what the expenses of, for instance, lighting projects, replacing outdated lighting with energy efficient LED lighting. We've done a lot of that in the district, but there's more that we can do. Right now, we're in the midst of a solar project at Menomonie Middle School. And I think it's going to be important that if we expect to continue having our long-term capital improvement fund be able to fund our current footprint, we're going to have to look at some of those energy savings and build those savings in as additional revenue for Fund 46. We're off to a great start. I think we have a model Fund 46 plan in our state, but I think there's more we're going to have to do if we're going to be able to continue with some of the plans that we have.
our community service fund 80, this is a chart of the tax levy history. You'll see the last 4 years have gone up slightly. Now this year, we have decreased that. Over the past several years, we have increased our fund balance in Fund 80, and so we decreased our tax levy due to the increase in our fund balance. And then our post-employment benefit, Fund 73. This past year, we had, they call it the table update for our study. Next year, or at the end of this year, we're due for a full OPEB study. So I suspect these numbers will be updated more at that time. But for right now, in Fund 73, our Employee Benefit Trust Fund, we have $9.7 million in total OPEB pension liability, 6.4% in fund balance, and $3.1 million in our net OPEB pension liability unfunded, and overall $11.9 million in anticipated payments. Our local post-employment benefits are for most full-time employees. It does include health insurance premiums, contributions to an HRA account, and then also a cash stipend benefit.
So even though there's about 3.1 million that's unfunded, this is very remarkable. And if you were to go back 7 years and look at what this was, I think it was over 20 million unfunded. So we put ourselves in a really good position, and we think that moving forward, what we have for Fund 73 is going to work out really well for our school district.
And this is just a chart of our OPEB benefits paid and projected. This is actually the same chart as last year. Because we didn't have that full study, I was unable to update this chart. But back in 18-19, we had 86 retirees, and then the total paid out was just under 2 million. It's about 1.9 million.
For the board members who were on the board in 2014, 2015, I remember talking about kind of a fiscal cliff, and you can see that we've kind of gotten over the peak of that, and the difficult decisions and hard work that the board has done has put our district in a position to get through these periods of high cost with OPEB.
Salary and benefits is the largest expenditure in our budget. This year it's approximately 74% of our budget. We've been very competitive with comparable school districts in our county and conference and region. We've done salary comparables and have updated accordingly. Major changes for compensation for teachers were in 2017, hourly in 2018, and substitutes extracurricular in 19 and beyond to align with the needs and priorities of the school district. In 21-22, our CPI increase was 1.89%. Staffing costs are increasing due to COVID-19. And current staff members continue to progress through the salary schedule, and we have fewer teachers qualifying for that old OPEB retirement benefit. Changes that we made to our self-funded health insurance plan years ago have helped mitigate the rapidly increasing healthcare costs.
This is going to need to be a higher priority for our school district, and I know that we've forecasted now for a few years, based on our staffing demographics, that the cost of the same staff that we had a couple of years ago anticipated was going to be probably a third more expensive moving into the future. That was prior to what we've seen with inflation. So we are going to have to be ready for that. We're going to have to keep that in mind, especially as we start talking about how the state has chosen to fund schools over the next 2 years with the ESSER money, the coronavirus relief funding. So I think we need to be very careful with this. We have made some significant changes, like Leah mentioned, with our support staff, with our teaching staff, to make sure that we maintain competitive wages and salaries. But I think we're going to see challenges like we haven't seen in a real long time over the next few years in terms of the competitive market for educators, and I know the school board is aware of that, and we will be making recommendations to make sure that our salaries and wages stay competitive.
If we take a look at our health insurance fund, the total cost of premiums this year, you'll see has decreased some. We had more employees on our plan last year than we did this year, but you'll see for our single and family plan premium amounts, we have not increased those over the last 5 years. Last year and trending this year, our claims costs have gone up, so we'll be looking at those premium contribution amounts this year to see if we need to increase it, but at this time, we don't have any plans to increase it for, obviously for this January or next July.
This is a really informative chart, though. If you look at the beginning, you can see there were a number of years where the cost of premiums were above the contributions, and it was concerning to see what our health insurance fund was about 7 or 8 years ago. I think the work that we've done has put us in a position where our health insurance fund, our self-funded fund, is in a very healthy spot. However, as the cost of healthcare continues to increase, we have kept our premiums frozen now for a number of years. And I do think there is some room there for that. However, I don't know how much longer we'll be able to enjoy that, especially with COVID and the cost of healthcare. So as proud as I am that we've been able to keep our premium costs stable, which is equated to more take-home pay for all school district employees, I would anticipate that sometime in the next year or two, we may have to look at our premiums or our plan design moving forward.
Our grant funding for this year, we're in the second year of our Market Aid Parental grant. It runs through 2023. This year, they break down the $485,000 overall grant award per year. This year, we're going to get about $160,000 of that $485,000. And then DPI has a school-based mental health grant. We were awarded $27,540 from that. We also received some fresh fruits and vegetable grants. This school year, we had one award in July for $3,060, and then another award in October for $17,490. If we take a look at our federal grant funding, over the last 5 years, there's a chart here that shows each of the Title I, II, III, and IV grants, and then Carl Perkins. You can see like Title I has decreased 4%. Title II over the last 5 years, Title II has gone down 10%. Title III has gone down 5%. But they haven't increased the funding in Title IV. That's gone up 32%. And then Carl Perkins, which is our tech ed vocational ed grant, that too has gone down about 4% in the last 5 years.
Too bad Title I is not the one going up by 32%.
Federal IDEA funding, that is our special education grant funding from the federal government. You'll see there over the past 5 years for each of those, we have flow through and then we have preschool. They've each gone up. Flow through has gone up about 5% and preschool's gone up about 10%. And then we have our federal COVID-19 funding. Between March 2020 and 2021, Congress passed 3 stimulus bills under the Elementary Secondary Emergency Education Relief Fund. We received ESSER 1 for CARES Act funds in starting last school year. We were awarded $482,931. We have spent almost all of that grant. We do have until the end of this school year to spend those funds. We only have a couple $100 left, and we are planning to spend the remainder of that on PPE equipment. ESSER 2, we so far, our grant award is $1.726 million, and we have till the end of 2023 to spend those funds. So far, we've budgeted just over 1.6 million of that for this year and next year. And then ESSER 3, we're scheduled to receive 3.868 million. So far, we have not budgeted any of those funds, and we do have until 2024 to spend those. Here in December, actually on December 9th, we were also awarded an aid from, came through the state, but I believe it's federal funds. We received $448,892, and that is not based on a claim or a grant where we have to claim the funds. This is just an aid where we receive the payment. So it can be used to offset our costs related to COVID-19 and to help the school district out in any areas where we need it.
So before we get to questions, I do want to just speak another minute or two on the federal COVID funding. Some of the examples, and this is in the public side of board docs, some of the examples would be staffing of the building health rooms, staffing of an additional district nurse, full-time district-wide substitute teachers, staffing incentives for substitute teachers, staffing incentives for summer school, staffing additional academic intervention positions, additional classroom teachers last school year to reduce classroom size and promote social distancing, increased cleaning and sanitation within our schools, procurement of personal protective equipment and supplies, procurement of academic interventions and instructional resources to address learning loss, mobile hotspots for use by students without internet access, costs associated with after-school academic support programming, and costs associated with the delivery of virtual instruction. As we look to next year, a number of those items will still be in our plan, perhaps not all of them. But then also, as we look towards staffing, maintaining appropriate class sizes is going to continue to be a challenge. The Chromebooks that we purchased for all the students are going to need to be refreshed. Classroom display, smartboard technology. There's a number of smartboards across the district that need to be replaced. We anticipate the need for additional academic interventions and instructional resources. And 20% of the ESSER funding needs to be on evidence-based intervention criteria. And then additional district operations to be identified as we move forward to meet the need of the funding requirements of ESSER funding. So I guess at this point, we'll certainly take any questions about any of the budget issues or any of the budget presentation, but we also will open it up for any feedback people have about the use of the ESSER money.
Okay, so that time, we move into the discussion phase. Margaret?
Okay, I don't have a really good understanding of the ESSER. But what I did hear you say is we're not having an increase in revenue limits or per pupil. So how do we give salary and benefit increases without revenue increases if we're not using one-time dollars? Or we can't use ESSER for just normal operating expenses, can we?
In many cases we can, Margaret, and I know where you're going with that. It's a concern of mine as well. The way that schools in Wisconsin are funded for the next 2 years essentially is reliant mostly on the coronavirus relief funding. So instead of, when the funding was first announced, some school districts started planning building projects or purchased a bunch of items because people thought it was going to be extra funding on top of what has typically been increases from the state. That's not how this biennial budget was set up though, and that's why we were very careful in Menomonie. We did not do that. We decided to make sure that we would have funding in the biennial budget first before identifying extra things beyond what was the most basic needs of the pandemic relief. So it has put us in a position where we will be able to move forward and continue with operations. But I do understand there is a mindset perhaps of trying to operate and keep that money, that one-time money separate. There has been discussion though, and there was discussion during this last biennial budget that I do believe lawmakers understand that there's going to be backfilling needed when the federal money is not there in the next biennial budget. I do believe there has been funding set aside for that, but I don't think there's any legal, I don't think there's anything legally that will mandate that to be backfilled.
I like the word you're using, because I guess I didn't know how to express this, but that's my concern. Once that's gone, there's gonna be a big hole, and that means we're going to need catch up.
Yeah, if the state does not come through with backfilling, what I can tell you though is that if us and Menomonie are in that type of situation where we're having to cut, there are going to be many schools in Wisconsin that are going to be in far worse shape than we are. We have set ourselves up to be in a good position. I do think that we should prioritize our programming that we currently have and make sure we put that first, and our staffing that we have, and not look at frills or, we won't do that anyway. But I do think we have to keep that in mind.
Leah also said there was no increase in the low ceiling. That doesn't impact us, does it? Because we don't get anything from that.
Right.
Any other questions? Dave?
Yeah, I have two related questions about enrollment and also staffing. So there was a graph that showed the enrollment drop, of course, in 2020, came back most of the way in 2021. I'm curious if there's any data out there about where those students went. Is this comparable demographic change across this region of the state? Or are there students who kind of left permanently, we don't know if they're gonna come back? I'm curious if there's any data about that. And then the second question is, one thing I didn't see in there in the presentation, which was a layout of the staffing of each kind of sector of employment year by year. I'm curious what kind of attrition rates have been the last couple of years.
Yeah, we don't have that in our budget hearing. We will be talking, the board will be talking about staffing this spring. In terms of where students went, we do know that there was a higher number of students that did elect to do homeschooling or private schooling. I don't know that would account for that entire change, but I do think we can anticipate a number of students coming back. We saw quite a large number of students coming back after last year. I would expect we would see more for next year, but some of that's going to be dependent on the pandemic.
Any other questions? Did he answer both your, okay, any other questions? Sure.
The change in the Title 1A over the past few years, is that a factor of the federal government putting less money into that area, or is it a factor of our change in free and reduced lunch?
I think it's a factor of the federal government funding less of it, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Margaret?
Just a comment, even with my glasses, I don't have 20/20 vision, I could not really see this. Can that be put on the, wherever is it there and I can see it?
It is on the public Word doc site.
If you look up the mid-year budget hearing,
Yeah.
there's an attachment in there that has all these.
Oh, I went there, but I didn't. Well,
Margaret, if you have a hard time, give me a call tomorrow and we can step you through it.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll ask for adjournment, a motion to adjourn. Amy, is there a second? Second. Carl, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned for the mid-year budget hearing. Now we'll start our next meeting. We have 3 meetings scheduled tonight. The second one is a notice or a special meeting of the electors, which is the people that we have here today. So at this time, I'd like to call that meeting to order. First order of business is to elect a chairperson for the meeting, since this is a meeting of the electors. So is there a nomination or a motion to elect a chairperson?
I'll nominate Dave Steyer to be
Sure. We have a nomination. Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Motion to close nominations and cast unanimous ballot for Dave Steyer for chair. Is there a motion?
I'll move to close nomination.
Charlie, second. Angie? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So our first item of business is, I'll turn it off over to Joe. Purchase of environmental land. So we need a motion, sorry. So I would ask, and this is for everybody, it's not just the board. The proposed motion is motion to approve the purchase of 0.409 acres of real estate by the school district of the Menomonie area, adjacent to the school district of Menomonie area environmental site, and a part of Dunn County, and it's got a parcel number 17014-228-140-443-00007. Just in case. So I would ask for a motion to approve that purchase. Is there a motion? Brian, is there a second?
Second.
Amy, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Joe, do you want
I'd just like to say that we've discussed this a number of times. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but are there any questions?
we're just tidying up a little bit next to a driveway going into the environmental site is all this stuff. So, okay, if there's no further discussion, we will vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Is that Carl?
Yep, second.
Amy, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We stand adjourned. Okay, now we'll start our next meeting. If they only all went this way. Okay, now this time I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Menomonie School Board to order. You can bring it up, Josie. Thank you. This time I'd ask Janet to take roll.
All right. Chris Freeman. Mark Gilman. Tanya Busey. Here. Clint Moses.
Here.
Carl Palmer.
Here.
Amy Riddle Swanson. Here. Charlie Schneider.
Here.
Angie Skillings. Here. And Dave Steyer.
Here. Our apologies, we knew Chris would be absent. Mark, we were supposed to dial in, so we're gonna get him hooked up here quick.
Mark, we're about to put you on for the board meeting.
Good.
Can you hear me okay, Mark? Okay. Very good. We have started the meeting. We called you just a touch late, okay? Okay, we have a quorum to conduct business at this time. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. First order, or item D on opening items is agenda order approval and revision. Does anybody have anything for tonight?
Yes,
Carl?
I would like to table item 2A5 certification of updated school safety plans until next meeting.
I understand there were some things that you wanted to.
Yeah, there's over 1,200 pages between the plans and was not not enough time to get through that information with significant, I mean, there's liability to those plans, so.
Okay, so we have a motion, is there a second? Amy,
Second.
any further discussion? Okay,
Yes, yep, can we separate the regular minutes out for the 13th?
just a second, we'll finish the motion on tabling first, which is not debatable, our FFA party protein should have caught that. That's what I'm saying. No debate, okay, so item, should we get that?
2A5, certification of updated school safety plans.
As it was explained to me, I could hear the murmuring, to lay on the table is archaic language, nowadays we call it table, so, just so you understand. I got chewed out for once. Okay, so we have a motion to lay on the table. Janet, would you take the vote, please?
Does anybody not get the vote?
Amy, did you get the vote?
I somehow got on the agenda, oh, here it is. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
Okay, motion to table passes by a vote of 6-1 with one abstention from Mark. Okay, any other items on the agenda approval and revisions? Tanya?
Yeah, can we just separate out the minutes for 12-13, so it's 2A1, right? Yeah,
Do you want that moved into the action or?
that, I just want to separate, I'm gonna abstain, so I just want to make sure I can vote for everything else.
Yep, we'll pull that down into the action item. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Our next order of business is item E, recommendations and accommodations. And, okay, I guess we'll start with the Menomonie FFA, if you folks would want to come forward.
Hit the button on that mic so it makes sure it goes through.
Okay, so we're here from Menomonie FFA. I'm Emily Zukowski. This is Madison Kwok and Brady Basslender. At our banquet in May of 2021, the Menomonie FFA awarded the Menomonie School District the Outstanding Service Award. Each year, the FFA chooses a business or company that has served the FFA in agriculture in an outstanding manner. The award goes to a group of people that have helped support the FFA in many ways. We greatly appreciate all they do for agriculture and would like to say thank you.
These past years have been very challenging for our students at MHS. The FFA would like to say thank you to the school district of the Menomonie area for keeping things rolling during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The support of the school district is greatly appreciated, and we cannot have a functioning chapter without it. Congratulations on winning this award, and thank you for your continued support of the Menomonie FFA.
Thank you. Okay, and before you go anywhere, we have one for you. The Board of Education of the School District of the Menomonie area recognizes the Menomonie FFA chapter. The School Board of the Menomonie Area School District recognizes the FFA chapter for their outstanding service. So from us to you, thank you for all that you do. And thanks for Mrs. D and Tricia and the rest of them. And,
So Dave, make sure you take that plaque. We have a good spot for it on the wall right there. Thank you so much, FFA members. That really means a lot.
Is Sarah here? Sarah Hirsch? The Board of Education of the School District of the Menomonie area recognizes Sarah Hirsch for her outstanding service. Sarah volunteered her signing skills to assist a student in great distress while transferring buses at Oakland Elementary. Sarah was exposed to inclement weather for over an hour and then drove home in snowstorm conditions on an early release day. So, thank you very much. Okay, our next item of business is highlight on youth. And Mr. Casey.
Okay, so our highlight on youth from MHS today is from our MHS forensics team. And we have a couple individuals here representing the forensics team. We have one of our captains, Maddie Moses, and then also one of our advisors, Mrs. Nolte as well. So what I was hoping to do for all of you guys tonight is Maddie is prepared to go ahead and present some of, or one of, I think it's poetry, correct?
Yes.
For all of us today. So this is one of the pieces of competition that our students can perform during different competitions, usually taking place mostly in February, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Ending in kind of a state competition later into the spring. Menomonie, if you guys are unaware, Menomonie has won the top award for forensics for the last 13 years, which is the Excellence in Speech Award. So we're pretty proud of what the forensics team has done. The numbers dipped just a hair last year, but they're rebuilding even amidst COVID this year as well. So without further ado, kick it over to Maddie, and she can perform for you.
Ms. Nolte, do you want to talk at all, or?
I do not.
Okay.
Feel free to adjust that mic as you need to.
Okay.
Is the blue light on?
Yes, the blue light is on.
Great.
Good evening, my name is Maddie Moses. I'm one of the captains of the forensics team. Today, I will be presenting the poem, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. Angelou was an African-American poet and civil rights activist. Her poetry and resilience inspired many. Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you so beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells, pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still, I'll rise. Do you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard. 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines, digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise, up from a past that's rooted in pain. I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you.
Chip off the old block, Clint, right?
She might do a little better. Good job.
We do have some chairs if some of you that are seated outside would like to come in, there is room. Okay, our next order of business is the student rep communications. And so at this time, I'd like to call Grace and Logan forward to give their report.
So we have some club announcements to start with. DECA had their 50th district level competition on Saturday at UW Stout. They competed in areas of finance, hospitality, marketing, and business. And we had a lot of people placed in this, so we're gonna list some people off. Riley Beasley and Anna Burns placed second in buying and merchandising. Olivia Burstead got a finalist medal for hotel and lodging. Tally Swanepoel placed in marketing communications, role play 1 and role play 2. She got third place in that. Madeline Ellison and Morgan Stewart got a test medal in hospitality services. Rayleigh Granger got a medal in retail merchandising. Isabel Colick got restaurant and food service management. She got a test medal, a finalist medal, and a third place. Erin McNally and Lily Hastings got first place in their role play 1 and role play 2. Kinley Richards was competing in retail merchandising, and she got a test medal and a finalist medal in third place. Lyric McDonald was competing in principles of marketing, and she got 7th place in that.
The Wisconsin Cross Country Coaches Association named Bella Jacobson the Northwestern District Runner of the Year for 2021. Craig Olson was also named the Wisconsin Cross Country Coaches Association Coach of the Year for the Northwestern District. Bella Jacobson, Maddie Palmer, Helen Chen, Allie Rue, Anna Nsombi, Brooklyn Hoff, and Emma Momsen were named to the Academic All-State Team for cross country with a cumulative team GPA of 3.94.
The MHS Student Council hosted a fundraising drive for the Wisconsin Foster Closet, Christmas Miracles, Positive Alternatives, and the Dunn County Humane Society. Along with this, Student Council made tie blankets that the Humane Society can use as beds for cats and dogs. Tons of donations were collected and are being distributed to people and animals in need. Our Science Olympiad team competed at a national satellite tournament on Saturday. There were over 200 teams participating nationwide, and we'll look forward to seeing the results.
Events this week at MHS include girls basketball home tonight at 7:15 versus Prescott, boys away tonight at 7:15 versus Altoona, girls ice hockey tomorrow at 5 in the Hobbs Ice Arena, boys hockey tomorrow in Hudson at 7, girls gymnastics are home tomorrow at 6. On Thursday, girls hockey faces Hayward and Chippewa, boys hockey faces Rice Lake away, and wrestling has their senior night at home. On Friday, boys swim travels to Wausau, girls basketball travels to Hudson, and boys face Hudson at home in basketball.
Are there any comments or questions?
Busy. Busy. Any questions from the board? Comments? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Before our forensics coach heads out, I just want to say kudos to the program and what Grace and Logan just talked about with everything else going on in the high school. Personally, 4 kids have been through it and have gained a lot from that, speaking and things like that. So thank you for what you guys do. Okay, with nothing else, we'll move on to our next agenda item, community communications. I currently have 2. Jana, we didn't have any.
No.
The comments of the people of the school district of the Menomonie area are encouraged and appreciated by the board and administrators. Education is a partnership with the schools, parents, and taxpayers all being important participants. This is a time to air concerns and express your opinion on issues. There should be no negative personal attacks against any individuals, including staff, board members, or administration. We have 2. I'll allow up to 3 minutes per person. When you come to the mic, please state your name, your municipality that you live in, And Abe Smith will start, and Josie Coleman will be second. Abe?
Hi, and I apologize for my informal dress, it's very cold outside. So, as we look around the country right now, oh, I'm sorry, Abraham Smith, Tom Menomonie. As we look around the country right now, I think we see a situation where lots of schools are under a lot of stress, particularly the teachers, right? Teachers who work professionally have been working for now almost 2 years under extreme circumstances. I am worried that we are going to see, burnout, attrition, people basically leaving the career because it's just getting too hard. So what I kind of ask of the administration of the school board is to find ways to accommodate the needs of teachers especially next month, I think. It sounds like it's going to be pretty wild next month. If there's ways to be flexible with PTO, if there are ways to make sure that teachers never feel pressured to go to work if they or their kids feel sick. See if there are ways to make sure that they understand that they're respected and really adored in the district, right? That they don't have to be there all alone. It's really hard. You can hear my voice. I am actually kind of dreading looking into the spring semester at Stout with classic school students. And I can't imagine what it's like to be, teaching a first, second, third grade course where you're both, taking care of the kids and trying to teach them under these circumstances. So whatever we can do, whatever flexibility can work into the standard policies, please accommodate the teachers however you need to. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Abe. Josie?
Hi. Hello?
Is the blue light on?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, again. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, sorry. I'm Josie Pillman, and I'm from Knapp, which is in the Menomonie School District. Board members and Dr. Zajdowski. I understand that around this time of year, the district begins to assess if they will be needing to hire new teachers for the school year. There's also a natural turnover with retirements and resignations, so we will have positions to fill for the new year. I wonder what part the school board has in helping Dr. Zajdowski and maybe the principals vet these new educators. It is most important that our community has men and women of character and integrity who are teaching and schooling our children. Academic excellence is valuable, but a person with good character will pass that quality along to the young scholars under his or her tutelage. So I would encourage the school board members to sit in on the interviews and to meet these potentially new members of the teaching staff before they arrive in our schools. Be an active participant. It really matters to our community what character our students are being taught. More and more, the academic institutions that are educating our teachers are being intentional at skewing the worldview of our teachers. It often results in compromised character. I know we want academic excellence in our Menomonie schools, and also critical thinkers with character and integrity, with the courage to stand up against culture when it is wrong. Let's choose only the best for these new hires. And I continue to be concerned about the gender policy plan which is being used in the Menomonie High School. It is unconscionable to think that gender-confused students are allowed to act out their imagined gender at the expense and even danger of their morally sound peers. This must stop. Students must be taught how to gracefully and respectfully disagree with wrong, aberrant ideas and actions. Please, board members, take a look at this policy before bad things happen.
Thank you, Josie. One thing that I neglected to do when I was going to, it started meeting, we do have some school board candidates here. If you would please stand up, just introduce yourself, so put a name to a face. As the incumbent, I'm running, Clint and Chris are not running again. I'm Dave Steyer.
Hey, I'm Brittany Weicker, I'm also running for school board.
Thank you.
And Abe Smith, I'm also running.
Rachel Henderson,
School board.
I'm Scott Parker. I'm also running for school board.
Dominique Stewart.
Really nice turnout. Yeah, 6 out of 7 here. Thank you. Hope you didn't mind that. Okay, we'll move on to item I, revenue and expense reports for the month ending December. 2021. Take it away, yeah.
Okay, we'll take a look at the revenue report first. So for the general operations fund 10, we received in $9,097,002.77. For Fund 21, our gift account, we received in $216,604.37. And then Special Education Fund 27, we received in $579,149.95. The notes for December, we received our Equalization Aid payment and our second Special Education Aid payment, and then various grant payments were received, and then local funds as well. Next, we'll take a look at our expense by function report, if you'd like to open that up. So our year-to-date month ended December 2022 for our general fund 10, we're at 34.23% compared to 33.49%. For special education, we're at 35.59% compared to 33.66%. And then for food service, we're at 37.61 compared to 37.94. Pretty typical for this time of year for our expenditures. There are some one-time bill payments that vary from year to year, so that is a factor in these percentages. And then the other report, expenses by object for year-to-date, month ended December 2021. This year we're at 34.02% for all funds compared to 43.87% last year. And last year, that percentage was much higher because we had that refunding, or refinancing of our Fund 38 debt service. Any questions?
Yeah, back to the first report on the revenues, I'm looking at the grants, and I know a lot of it's timing, but I see we're budgeting a significant amount for these, some of these grants, when we yet to receive any of it. Is this pretty typical? I mean, it looks like very few of them that were budgeted have actually come through year to date.
Right, we, like the educator effectiveness, youth apprenticeship, CTE, all of those funds come in a little bit later in the year. The larger grants, we do on a quarterly basis, and so some of those we have received in, but the smaller ones we typically do biannually.
It's kind of what I figured, it just looks like it's kind of lagging compared to previous that I've seen.
And Clint, I know you know this, but for the benefit of anybody watching, our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So even though we just wrapped up December 31st, it's really only the midpoint of our budget year.
Any other questions for Leah? Joe, just hand me a note to remind the board members to refresh your screens so that because the agenda was changed. So make sure to refresh your screen so it appears properly as we go down the agenda. Okay, we'll move to, thank you, Leah. Item J, monthly employment report. Anybody have any questions on that? It's there for your information. Seeing none. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Everybody's still refreshing.
Janet needs to put a strike through number 5 as well, the certification of school safety plans. That was the item that was tabled.
Okay.
So it'd be items 1 through 7 minus item 5. I'm sorry, also number 1 was moved to the action agenda. So it's items 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7.
We do have under item 4A, the approval of minutes from December 13th, so that's where it needs to be We just gotta strike them out of the consent agenda. Done, Janet? Okay, if you refresh again, it should be right. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Items 2, 3, 4. I should double check, to make sure you get the number. Okay, Jan's gonna strike through number 1. What we're gonna ask for a motion for is number 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Is there a motion to approve? Clint, is there a second?
I second.
Carl? The consent agenda as presented includes number 2, financial reports, that the board approved general fund checks in the amount of $2,182,396.55 and cash receipts in the amount of $125,569.70 for the month of December 2021 as presented. Donations, public donations exceeding $1,000 for the month of December 2021 are as presented. $1,000 to the Menomonie High School from Shields. Number 4, certification of school safety drills as presented for Downsville, Menomonie Middle School, High School, and Oakland Elementary. Number 6, the 2021-2022 budget revisions that the board approves the revisions as presented. And number 7, number of regular and special education spaces available for open enrollment. The board approved the annual open enrollment spaces available report we went through last meeting. Quite a bit, or to a large extent, we went through. So, or I should say, we went through everything on that at our last meeting. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just what was the $1,000 for, the Shield donation?
I'm not sure. Mr. Drake, are you aware of what that donation was for from Shield?
Just for staff support, and the individual I worked with gave me a little bit of latitude to work with some of our departments to see what that would be. So we haven't spent any money yet, and we're still kind of working on what that might actually look like, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, Jenna, let's vote. Okay, motion carries unanimous vote of 8-0. Personnel consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'm gonna ask for.
He's doing electronic. So. Okay, so item 3, personnel consent agenda. Motion to approve. Amy, is there a second? Second. Charlie? Any discussion? Okay.
I just want to point out that this includes the retirement of Mr. Stanley and also Ms. Gibson. Certainly we'll miss both of them at the end of the school year. Also, the retirement deadline notification is at the end of this week. So we are anticipating a couple more retirements to be on the next board agenda.
Amy?
You answered my question. November 15th, and 30 more.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions? Okay, Janet? Motion is approved, 8-0. Action agenda, item A, approve minutes from a regular board meeting, December 13th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Carl, is there a second? Charlie, any discussion? I think, Tom, you wanted to separate it out, you missed that meeting, is that correct? Okay. Just for clarification. Okay, if there's no discussion, Janet, let's go. We're keeping you busy. Carol made the motion, Charlie seconded it. Yeah, I got a good joke. Farmer was out counting his cows in the pasture. He came up with 296. But when he brought them in, they rounded up to 300. When I must have told him. When he rounded up, he was at 300. There we go. I did.
Oh, there you go. Matt.
Yes, it was my turn. Okay. Hey, you got a better one. Motion passes 6-2 with 2 abstentions, Tanya and Mark. 6-0 to 2. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the discussion item on the agenda. We'll start with item 5A, the clerk's report on the 2022 school board election.
All right, we'll take over here. The deadline for filing candidacy papers for the spring school board election was 5 p.m. on Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. Extended to Friday, January 7th, 2022 at 5 p.m. The extension was required due to incumbent Glenn Moses not filing notice of non-candidacy or filing declaration of candidacy by January 4th, 2022 deadline. The registered candidates for the 2022 election at the time of this posting are Rachel Henderson, Scott Parker, Jennifer Sackery, Abraham Smith, Dominic Stewart, and incumbent David Steyer, and Brittany Whitaker. Since there are 7 candidates for 3 positions, there will be a primary election scheduled for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. The drawing of lots for the ballot order in the primary election was conducted on Friday, January 7th at 5 p.m. at the ASC boardroom. And you have the lot? Yep.
I think Scott was there for the drawing, and Brittany and Dominique. Was that it? That was it.
All right, Abe Smith.
So this is the order, ballot order.
This is the ballot order as drawn on Friday. Number 1, Abe Smith. Number 2, David Steyer. Number 3, Jennifer Sackery. Number 4, Brittany Whitaker. Number 5, Dominic Stewart. Number 6, Rachel Henderson. And number 7, Scott Parker.
Okay, thank you, Clint and Janet. Any questions or discussion on that? Comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 5B, the review of the 30-year capital improvement plan.
So we talked a little bit about this during the mid-year budget hearing. And I really appreciate the work of Kevin Tomaszewski, our Director of Building Grounds, also Leah Theater, our Director of Business Services, and all of our building principals and other faculty and staff that have had input on making sure that our 30-year capital maintenance plan includes our building footprint. Kevin will go through with more detail, but I also want to especially call out our technology department and our Director of Technology Services, Katie Krieger. That's probably the biggest improvement we've made to the plan this year is we have really looked at our technology infrastructure to make sure that we have plans in place for that. So as you all know, we're very, very proud of what we've done looking out 30 years in all sorts of different parts of our school district. And Kevin, you can go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Okay, so for today's update, we're primarily gonna start off with columns H, I, and J in the 30-year plan. So looking at H and I, those are the projects that are complete.
Can you pull that mic in just a little bit?
I are the projects that are in progress, and J are the ones that we're planning on doing for the upcoming year.
Kevin, hold on a second. I know I put in the notes, but if you're not used to using the Chromebook as much, it's such a large document. In order for you to see it in the spreadsheet, we had to really shrink it down. So there should be a way for you to magnify that if you want to look at the different columns that Kevin's referring to. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so real quickly, column H, that was the first year of projects. The final tally is in, we had 7 projects. We originally estimated those projects to come in at 72,597, and we came in under at 64,754. So we did well there. Column I of the plan, that's our current projects. So about this time next year, I'm gonna be able to give you a good update on that. But as a general overview, we had 9 projects total. Out of those 9, we're currently sitting at 6 of them. 6 of them are complete. 2 more of them should be done in the May-June timeframe, and then 1 of them will go into summer break. And again, January of 23 is when we'll have the final numbers for that. Column J, that's where everything new is. There's a lot of information in here, and I did share this Word document. If you find it hard to look at the spreadsheet, the Word document kind of goes right down the 30-year plan as well, so that might be easier.
Kevin, so if you could just pause for a second. So in the summary document that Kevin provided on page 3, Roman numeral 3, you can see that that's talking about column J of the plan. The previous items Kevin just talked about are called out earlier in the outline.
Yep, so number 3, column J, that includes all the projects we're planning on doing, and I also noted projects that may have been originally planned for this year that we moved, and some new projects as well. So starting out in the ASC section of column J, right off the bat, we have 2 changes. District wireless and network switches, we're looking to remove those titles, not the projects necessarily, but the titles of the projects, and we're gonna have one larger combined project, which is named Tech Infrastructure. So that's the first change. And then we have some new projects. I think we have a total of 5 new tech projects in this category. Staff Chromebooks, it's a new project, 140 Chromebooks, 4-year cycle to begin in 25-26. Staff desktops, 55 of them, 5-year cycle, begin in 22-23. K-5 student devices, another new project, 4-year cycle, beginning in 26-27. Tech infrastructure, I already mentioned, that one's a little interesting with a 5-year on, 5-year off. Schedule beginning in 22-23. Admin and teacher devices, another new project, 105 devices, 4-year cycle beginning 22-23. So now on to the more my world stuff. Some flooring upgrades at Wakanda. Pretty straightforward. We have 8 classrooms and 2 small common areas that have outdated flooring that we're looking to improve this summer. Also at Wakanda, planning to do some sidewalk repairs. The sidewalk going up to the kindergarten wing of the school. Another change to the plan, next up would have been occupancy sensors. So what I've done with those for all locations is I combine the occupancy sensors with lighting. It just seems to make sense to go hand in hand. So the dollar amounts that are originally slated for the occupancy sensors are now in the LED categories. So for all locations, I'm looking to remove those projects. Wakanda, we're gonna postpone the LED. We just think we have a few better schools for energy savings to do first. And then finally at Wakanda, tech upgrades. That's a new project, 7-year cycle, 25 spaces beginning in 24-25. Oakland, this is the first school that we want to upgrade to LED, the first on this list anyway. So what we're looking at doing is going through the school and taking out anything fluorescent and replacing with LED. What we're recommending we do is bring on Lighting Design Solutions. They're a company out of the Wausau area. We've heard about them through contractors and our contact at Focus on Energy, excuse me. So what they would do, they would come into the facility and do an audit. They're gonna help us calculate our energy savings, work with us on the incentives. They work real close with Focus on Energy, and they might dial in my project estimates a little bit closer than I have them as well. So we would have their costs associated with their service are built into all the LED projects as seen on the 30-year plan. So once we have that information, then we would go out to RFP for those projects. Next up on the list, fire system at Oakland. This is one that's previously approved by the board. We ran into some supply issues, so we're looking to get that done over summer break. And tech upgrades, 7-year cycle, once again, 24 spaces at Oakland, starting in 24-25. Moving on to Downsville, some simple work down there, some blacktop maintenance, and then the technology upgrades, same cycle, 9 spaces, same year, 24-25. River Heights will be another school that we're looking to upgrade to LEDs this summer. And the technology upgrades there will be 32 spaces, again in 24-25. One of the projects originally scheduled for this summer was NAP windows. Since we last talked about that, we got a new tool, thermal imaging camera. So we've had a little bit of a chance to get out and test it out. And then we went to a few different buildings in the district. We came to ASC, I believe we checked Wakanda and my office. So we're seeing real similar results as far as energy loss goes. Across the board, so I think we need to spend a little more time on that, do a little bit better study, see where we can get the best results for the cost. So I plan to have that done by this time next year, have it reevaluated, scheduled for window replacements in the 30-year plan. And technology upgrades that have 8 spaces again in 24-25. Moving on to the middle school, this will be the 3rd school that we'd like to get LED upgrades this summer. I'm hopeful we can do all 3 schools. I want to get the okay to do all 3 schools, assuming we can. I'm hoping that the supply chain issues won't be a factor, but the LEDs combined with the solar at the middle school is going to be a pretty good deal. We're going to have an efficient building running over there. The solar next to mine, we're at the RFP stage for that job. I believe Justin talked to you folks about that. New project at the middle school, student lab. 90 student computers, 5-year cycle beginning next year in 22-23. Technology upgrades, that'll be 48 spaces at the middle school. That'll be next year as well. And plumbing improvements. We get some leaks in the middle school in the hot water recirc lines. So I'm looking to replace some plumbing and I'm looking to add some shut-off valves. When this happens, it's never convenient if we have to shut the water down. There are very few shut-offs in the school. We had a situation about a year ago probably where we went to clamp a line and the line collapsed. We had to shut the water off. Class was in session, not convenient to shut the water off for half an hour, 45 minutes. So that'll be another summer project that I'd like to get done. High school sidewalk repairs, eliminating chip hazards. Pool filtration, this is another one that we talked about already. Still planning to move forward with it, but along with the pool filtration, out of my regular budget, I'm looking to have an audit of the entire area complete before starting the project. I'm a little bit concerned about the year that most of that equipment went in. We're going back to the 70s for the plumbing. A lot of it is under the floor. There's some confined space issues. So I want to get the entire pool area, a good snapshot of it before we proceed with the filtration system. If there's no problems found, I'd like to move forward with filter, the filter. If not, if problems are found, we'll have to improve on that one. Student lab at high school, 30 computers, 5-year cycle beginning next year. And technology upgrades at high school, last but not least, 56 spaces beginning in 23-24. So that is the overview of the planned projects.
Total price tag, a little over 1.8 million.
I didn't want to say that.
Any questions for Kevin or discussion? Clint?
You've got pretty much everything spelled out in there, but because it's a project at each and every one of the buildings, specifically, what is the technology upgrades? I assume this is replacing smart boards and that type of stuff?
Well, there's a number of technology items in there, Clint, and Katie can always come up and answer more specifics, but what I can tell you is, we have all these buildings, and we have wireless access in all of them. So we have all the access points, we have all the switches to deal with that. But a number of these projects have to do with the actual devices. And these devices really get hit hard. I mean, when you think of every single day used by students and by staff, I don't even think that our replacement schedule is that aggressive. I think we was real mindful and being realistic about how many years we could get out of the devices. And then the other piece to it, like I mentioned before, is the classroom display. Our classroom display has really been pieced together over a long number of years, probably over a decade, in terms of most of our smart boards with different display projectors and interactive boards and things like that. And we really need to get our hands around it if we're going to have any kind of consistent classroom technology. So a lot of it's that as well.
Is the new technology going to be able to help with maybe virtual learning for kids that are out sick or unable to attend in person, like other districts have? Is that a consideration to be made with some of this new stuff?
Katie could answer that. We still have tried to prioritize not having our teachers having to try to do both at once. We aren't planning on creating distance learning rooms across the district with, webcams in multiple angles and stuff. So I wouldn't say that that's a real priority in this. What I can tell you is having good, reliable devices and good, reliable networking will be very beneficial for not only in-person instruction, but also for assisting students who are off-site.
Good questions. Other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
So just curious with this plan, if we have any plans put in place for the sports complex at the north end of the high school, does that fit into this plan somehow, some way? And if so, what does that look like and what would the next steps be for improvement?
Mark, I think the way to answer that is the current 30-year plan takes into account the current footprint at the sports complex. The track, the irrigation system, the lighting, the fencing, the scoreboard, and that was part of when that project was approved. Plans for funding that in the 30-year plan and accounting for that in the 30-year plan were done. There is nothing reflected in the 30-year plan about next steps. In talking to Mr. Mirren, some of the next steps in terms of expansion, I know that we have received a number of concerns and complaints about the spectator experience there. As that facility gets used more and more, and during the fall it was used almost every single evening, there really is not a good way for spectators to see what's happening at that facility. There's a couple real small bleacher sections that are at ground level. They're not really able to see a lot. So I do think there is the need for expansion. I know Mr. Mirren has also commented on not having any kind of press box for the scoreboard operator, the filmer. I know that people have been going up in scissors lifts and things like that, which are concerning. And then the other piece to it is the actual turf. Kevin and his crew have done an amazing job getting that grass to be a safer playing surface. But because it is a natural turf surface, it's very limited in terms of what can actually be held out there. All the lower level football games are held on there. All the track events, which are mostly on the track, are held out there. The soccer teams play out there. But because of all the events, all the competitive events that are out there, we're really not able to utilize that for practice, not because of it not being available. With the lights, we could put more events on that, but the natural turf simply would not hold up. And that's what you see typically in the past and in the schools, even though there's not many anymore that have natural turf, grass turf for the varsity football field, for instance. And then those districts that do have that natural turf, they typically keep that turf off limits for practices and other events just because it can't hold up. So right now, there's nothing reflected in the 30-year plan about adding seating or turf, but I think it is something the board could consider.
That answer your question, Mark?
Yes, it does, thank you.
I guess personally, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing at least the estimates to do some of that stuff. See what it would take. I mean, we've been, through COVID, we've been, not that I want to bring football back to the high school, for the high school football, I'm not sure that is anybody's goal, but just to have an outlet in case we get in a position where we can't have fans or things like that. Any other discussion? I'm sorry, Amy?
In regards to the sports complex, are donations still coming in? I mean, I don't think we usually approve any for that. But maybe that's something that people need to understand, it's the donation piece, because that's where it all started. It was supposed to be donations and not any tax settlers, which of course the board did put some money into, like $1 million. So I just think that we need to open up that piece again and maybe get some donations for those things.
Yeah, I don't think that the fundraising has continued very much for the sports complex, and I think we're probably at the point where raising money for bleachers and artificial turf, I think would be very difficult, especially in this current environment. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but if the board would like us to, I know Mr. Murin, has continued to work on planning. And like Dave said, I don't think there's any intention of replicating a varsity-sized stadium there, but probably something of a smaller bleacher section that would be elevated, artificial turf. There needs to be some bathrooms out there. I think we could come up and provide the board with a plan of what that might look like before you approve the 30-year plan at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Couple of things. Kevin, first of all, on your improvement plan update on page 6, you talk about the middle school solar. I think you have an extra 0 in the size of the system there. So, okay, I want to fix that.
Yeah.
And then secondly, Joe, and maybe this is a Leah question as well. What is the threshold for something to be a capital?
Lee, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, it's anything over $5,000.
Okay. So would individual computers be considered a capital expense then?
Leah?
If it's an entire project, yes. If you just are replacing a few computers here or there, no, but if you're doing them like a whole school or a whole classroom where the value is considerably higher, then yes, it should be capitalized.
Thank you.
One question that kind of ties into what Clint was talking about, and that is, I keep hearing about our capabilities for live streaming events all over the district, different schools and even here. And so I would hope that, is there anything figured in here for that, or? I'm not just talking board meetings, but that's a big thing, but also sporting events, like different basketball games or wrestling matches or whatever it might be. There's a lot of people that don't like to get out with COVID and everything else that's going on. So,
Not just sporting events, but how about forensics?
Oh yeah, the music concerts.
Concerts,
yeah.
plays, all that kind of stuff.
That's a good question. You know, I know that we have done a nice job getting live streaming up and going. A ton of events are being live streamed across the athletics and extracurricular and fine arts. However, I do think that's something, I made a note. I'll check with Mr. Mirren in terms of the high school, but also the other building principals. I know that here in the boardroom, this is another area that could be considered for improvement. You know, it kind of got thrown on us. But I think that's something we could take a strategic approach to. I know that when you look at the staffing plan this spring as well, the principals have been working on trying to develop some sort of club or some sort of way to expand that. You know, some school districts, like I know Hudson does a really good job with the live streaming. Their booster club took that on, and it's really not associated with the district. Whereas I believe in River Falls, it's more of a school district entity that takes that on. So even though we have live streaming, we don't have it tied into commentary. I mean, once in a while, Mr. Berg, if he's record or streaming something, he'll provide some live commentary. A few times, especially with varsity football, we were able to put the radio broadcast into the live stream. I know some people really like that. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that with our current camera at the high school. And I know that Mr. Mirren's working on fixing that, but I do think that's an area of expansion, and whether or not we can fit that into the 30-year plan or have it prepared well enough for the next meeting, I guess will remain to be seen. But it is something we're working on and we'll make note of.
I had some friends that were at Cadott, which I think you're familiar with. They had a wrestling tournament last weekend and live streamed the whole thing on Saturday, and I'm very impressed with it.
Do they have commentary with it? They don't.
No, just a picture. And some people, that's all they want, is just a video, you know, just to see it.
All depends on the quality of the commentator, right?
Yeah. I wasn't going there. We're lucky to have it.
Well, no, but in all seriousness, I mean, I think if you were to click on it, what is it, 6:30? I don't think anything's on right now, but I'm pretty sure tonight, there's gonna be some events live streamed, and I think the girls' basketball game is gonna be live streamed against Prescott. Typically, what's happened is most schools have adopted where they are providing a live streaming for their home events. So tonight, the boys' basketball team is in Altoona. I would think that Altoona is probably live streaming that. And one thing we've done is we have not charged for our live streaming. Some school districts at the beginning of the pandemic partnered with like the National Federation of High Schools, and I know that I've watched a few of our students' events where you have to pay to watch them. We have not done that here, but we're still evaluating what different options might be. But we want to make sure that whatever we do is accessible for our families and community.
But the reality is, the issues related to streaming are more about personnel, someone taking it on as a champion, and not about the infrastructure that we have and something that would be in the 30-year plan.
Right, I mean, the board meeting's a good example. I mean, we're not paying anybody to be here right now, you know, specific for the recording. And I know I've said this before, but I appreciate Brian's work in making sure that this is set up, it's all ready to go. He makes sure the camera gets turned on. I know Tony has filled in a couple times to, you know, help out with that as well. So that's kind of how it's been approached so far. It's really just kind of been, you know, who can help out. And Mr. Mirren's taken out a lot of responsibility along with Mr. Berg to make sure that our high school events are streamed. But if we're gonna do it right, if we're really gonna make it what I think people want, it's gonna require investment. And we have not invested much in it at this point.
We are fortunate too to have Steve come and do our meetings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not affiliated with the school district, but we still appreciate it.
I don't want to get too much in the weeds on the live streaming, but like right now, who is filming the game against Prescott right now. They're up 32-25, just so you know.
Okay, I'm assuming that is our huddle camera, so
It just follows.
it just follows the action. Mr. Marin probably turned it on and coordinated the start of it. It's not a camera where you actually have to operate it. It's mounted up in the high school, but that's part of the challenge of trying to hook the audio into it.
I just ask because that's another cost beside the technology, obviously.
Right.
Carl?
Yeah, kind of just a general observation more than anything else. And certainly, I'd love to see some more cardio stuff, some things maybe the public could continue to use, and we're investing in more, resource to maintain the community access to pool and all those things. But, performance and then the hands-on stuff, so art room, and then I'm thinking the technical disciplines, the wood shops, the greenhouse type stuff, and unless I'm missing it, I don't see any in the 30-year plan for those, the technical disciplines, and I'm assuming that welders and things wear out, and they're probably more than $5,000. I don't know if that's a real question, but it seems like a hole in the plan a little bit.
What I can tell you with that, and I did make a note of it, Carl, and I think that's a good point. We have been very, very fortunate to receive a lot of grant support for some of those items you just mentioned. The one that comes to the first thought in my mind is the Anne Marie Foundation. And I know that we were just asked to submit another grant application, which Mr. Sterry takes care of. Also, we do have other funds available. And I know Mr. Seguin has helped facilitate some of those grant funds, more government type of grants. So I appreciate what you're saying, and perhaps that's something we still might want to include, but I don't know that we can move those grant funds into Fund 46, so I'm not sure those would be a good fit. But that doesn't mean there couldn't be some other equipment that would be even larger scale that might not be accounted for. So I thank you for that suggestion. So I wrote down cardio and tech.
Any other questions for Kevin? Sure.
Again, Kevin, as I said last year, kudos to you and your group. And I would encourage you guys to look at presenting at the State School Board Convention, which is next week, right? But obviously for next year, because what you have here, there's very, very few school districts in the state that have anything anywhere near this. This is what I do. I write these, I review these all the time. And this is far above what 90+% of the districts in the state have. So great job to you and your staff, but also, to show off what we do here, I think would be a great thing. And I would suggest that you guys do that, and maybe I'll remind you when I see next year and poke a little bit to get you to do it, because you're probably not the kind of guy that wants to do that yourself, but I think it'd be a great thing for you to do. Okay.
Thanks, Johnny. Amy?
We have presented in the past,
On Fund 46.
years ago,
Yep.
years ago. Yeah, we presented, there's all of us were there and presented and got a lot of good compliments and a pretty good crowd to come hear what we had to say.
Yeah, we did have a nice crowd, so the presentation probably just needs to be tweaked. But I want to circle back to what we talked about during the budget hearing, and I think it's really, really important. Last year when we took a look at the 30-year plan, and we started looking out to years 25 through 30, things were looking really good, like in the black, and it almost seemed like the plan was funded. And that was kind of a signal to us that, we really need to look at this thing and are there things that we're missing? And as you can see, with all the technology upgrades, there was a significant portion of our footprint that we were missing. So now when you start looking out, years 23, 27, I can't remember all of them, but there's some red, and that's okay. And I'm not afraid of the red, but that's the idea, is to try to identify these items so that, we're not all of a sudden 2 years away from having to replace a roof or having to replace all of our staff computers or something and not having a plan. But I do think that the board needs to keep that in mind when we get to year end on the budget, instead of, I think the board's done a great job over the last 7 years being real wise with year end funds. But in the event that we have more revenue than expenditures, Fund 46 is a perfect place to put those funds, especially if our fund balance is where it's at right now, where it's healthy. And by putting the Fund 46, that counts as a expendable, counts as an expense. So we get state aid on those dollars, and we can continue to build that fund. So there's two ways that we have built Fund 46. One is on year-end transfers, which I think we need to consider every year. The other way is through our annual budget. And you know that we have designated a portion of our annual budget into Fund 46. Things are going to get tougher. I think we know that. Funding of schools is not going to be easy over the next 5 years. It's going to be difficult. The board's going to have to protect Fund 46 if you want to be able to continue to maintain the footprint that we have. And then what I talked about with the energy projects, the expense side of those energy projects is in Fund 46 right now. The cost of the LED projects, the cost of the solar project. And not just the initial cost, but the replacement cost out 30 years in some cases. What we haven't done is reflected the savings. So if we put in those solar panels, we will be able to calculate what the savings is. When we put in the LED lights, we'll be able to calculate what the savings is. And what I would recommend is that we take a look at those savings and try to designate more of the annual budget based on those savings, dollars that used to be used paying for energy, put those dollars aside into Fund 46 so that when it comes time to replace the LED lights or the solar panels, that money will be there, those funds will be there. So I think we're being really wise with what we're doing, but there's going to be some big decisions coming up in the next, few budgets that if we're not wise, we are going to get out the district. I don't know if I'll be here by then, but 25 years, and there's going to be some problems with the Fund 46 if we don't continue to plan ahead.
Charlie?
One word of caution on that though is on the solar project, it will be easy in that we will know from the system how many kilowatt hours that system produced. So you'll know what you didn't pay to Excel. On the LED lighting projects, it's a little bit more difficult because things are a little bit squishy. When were the lights turned on? When were they turned off? How did you calculate all that? All of that math is a little bit more squishy. So to allot that money towards the project is a little bit more difficult. Not that you wouldn't want to allot some, don't get me wrong, but you just need to be careful.
I think that's
not taking too much credit, if you will.
I think that's a good point, Charlie, and perhaps we want to be a little conservative with what we consider to be revenue. I mean, that's probably not the right term, but savings. And that's something, just like the rest of this plan, we may put some initial figures in there, but the nice thing is we have an energy manager who's pretty darn good at that. I think Justin will be able to dial in pretty close, and maybe what we do next January, in terms of what we think the savings is, there's no reason why Justin couldn't come back with his annual report and say, well, actually the savings was this, which maybe it's more, so maybe the next year we allocate more, or maybe it's less and we realize that we were taking too much credit. But I agree, it's gonna be a living document like the rest of this plan. But I can see how easy it would be for a school district to build a solar panel and put the expense in, but then never really put the savings in. It'd be really easy to do that, and then all of a sudden, you can buy this or buy that. I think we should be smart about how we use those savings so that we can continue on this path we're on.
Okay, I think we've talked this over fairly well, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, item C, strategic planning targets for SDMA student achievement.
So Dave, I'm not sure how much time we need to spend on this. We certainly can spend as much time as the board wants, but we had a pretty in-depth discussion in December about these strategic planning targets, and it's unfortunate that Chris isn't here because I know he had some concerns and some ideas, and shortly after that December meeting, Brian and I sat down, and I think my biggest takeaway in December was that the targets, kind of the baselines that we brought the board in December weren't necessarily consistent, and a lot of it had to do with the pandemic, the timing of the assessments, and Brian had kind of mixed and matched. So we just looked at it and said, okay, we're gonna base everything on one assessment to set those baselines. Brian, is there anything specific you wanna maybe just highlight quickly?
Sure. So as Joe said, the baseline, I will use the same year for all the content areas. Then based off of the discussion and feedback from the board, we applied a 1% or 1 percentage point increase each of the remaining 3 years of the plan, which then puts the goal, you'll see 3 percentage points higher. And then there's a distance from the goal that's calculated using our current 2-year rolling average. So I think this streamlines this based off of feedback from the board, and it's gonna be really easy for us to determine whether or not we're making the progress towards that goal. I think these are ambitious, but I think we wanna, set goals in place that are gonna continue to move us forward.
Any additional feedback or any questions? Thanks again for the feedback last meeting on it.
Charlie?
Brian, if I'm understanding correctly, under the section labeled targets for Sdma student achievement, on the far right, distance from 2024 goal current. So that 2.85 under English language arts, as a for instance, what you're saying is the new goal is 2.85 points above what the old goal was, correct?
It's 2.85 points above what our current 2-year rolling average is.
Okay.
We set a target goal that's 3 percentage points higher of what our baseline goal was, our new goal, based off of last spring's state assessment. When we took a look, in most cases, that would be a pretty consistent way for us to go and utilize that same year. So that goal is 3 points higher than that. But if you look at our 3-year rolling average, which is something that we historically have taken a look at, that's the difference from that 3-year rolling average. So you see in some cases it's a little less than 3 points, in some cases it's more as we go forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Brian. Next item on the agenda is the discussion on the audit report.
So the board members received the audit report, and I think it's 104 pages. And Leah and I talked about it a little bit. It's very similar to what we've had in previous years. However, it's very important to go through it. You get the background packet on Thursday, so it's a lot to try to go through. What we can do is answer any initial questions tonight. And then if there's other questions, you can either contact me or Leah could always put this on a future agenda if more discussion is needed. But it is pretty standard. I think Leah and the business department did a great job. Having the audit is a big deal, and it's a lot of work for everyone here, and I applaud Leah and her staff for doing such a good job with it. But are there any questions on the audit tonight?
Amy?
Just looking at it and going through it and reading through it and everything, it looks like we're in pretty good shape. We don't have a lot of issues. I know they always say that our office is very small and there should be more people overseeing that, but they kind of make amends for that because, we don't have money to spend, on, 4 financial people or 6 financial people to go through that. So I know that's one thing that comes up all the time. Was there any other issues that we can fix or that we're all okay or anything?
You are correct. That is a finding we have each year, and the other 2 findings that we had is the same. We've had them every year, and it goes along the same lines. The financial statements, the district staff doesn't have the ability, nor does it require our staff to be able to do that. So we oversee our auditors preparing those documents for us. And then, like you said, the segregation of duties was a finding as well. And we do not have the staff to eliminate that finding. We would have to hire quite a few people in order to do that. The other finding was on adjustments, and those are journal entries. Given the district our size, it's almost impossible to not have one adjustment. This year we had 4. So it's not like we had a lot of adjustments, it's part of the process, and it will always be a finding unless we can get that to 0.
And we talk about the segregation of duties, and every year we talk about it, and every year I comment how even though, if you want to segregate all the duties, we have to hire a number of people. We do have a lot more oversight in our school district compared to some very small school districts. And I talked about that before. My first school district, where I was a superintendent, I was also the elementary principal, the high school principal. I was the only administrator in the whole district. So if I was at a lead team meeting, I just look in the mirror. So we do have, good systems in place, but there's always more you could have, you know, and, I think our people do a really good job with it. Good question though.
Yep,
Thanks,
and pupil services as well, you know, they take up a big share of the audit as well as the business office, and all the staff have done a really good job.
That would be Tonya. Good job, Tonya. And
Anything else?
Simple, easy, this is annual, we do this every year?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Our next item is to review the 2022 WASB resolutions. I guess on those, I don't know if you had anything glaring, Amy, otherwise if board members have a chance to look them over and have any questions or concerns, if they could get a hold of Amy, unless you had something that's specific.
just to say that I read over the resolution, I got my packet in the mail and I'm ready, prepared to go next week and do my duty, but if anyone has any strong feelings about whether I should vote one way or the other on any of the 10 resolutions that are outlined for you, just let me know before, I guess, Wednesday morning, I think Wednesday at 1:30 is when it convenes, so if you can get that to me by an email before, maybe like noon on Wednesday of next week, that would be great, and then I'll take care of it.
Okay. Is the entire conference in person, the convention?
Yes,
So,
it is, but they have a lot of requirements. You have to have your show proof that you were vaccinated, or have a negative test within 72 hours of being there, and you have to mask the whole entire time. All the meals have been canceled, the WASDA luncheon, the WASDA luncheon. There was a breakfast for the speaker, that's canceled. All the receptions are canceled, so, yeah. Other than that, it's gonna be in person.
well, thanks for going.
Thank you. I'll try to bring back a good report.
Okay. Okay, with that, we just have review items related to next meeting dates, board committees and reports. Our next school board meeting will be January 24th. We do have a professional development day on the 17th of January coming up. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Carl, is there a second? Angie, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.